Right. Hey, good afternoon. Dan, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you with us again. And Lisa, you're a newer friend for us at Grand Engine, but you've been incredibly helpful with linking us to med device teams in Minnesota, and you recently wrote a book. So we're excited to have this video cast with both of you as luminaries in your field. And we're going to talk about a lot of great topics in med device development and how each of you individually and your organizations drive improvement in that field. So, for everyone, I'm Sam Tetlow. I'm the founder and CEO of Grand Engine. We are a unique and differentiated firm that helps differentiated products and companies get funding, primarily non-dilutive through grants from a variety of sources and contracts, but also support for active clients' equity fundraising. But we're really here to help build great companies and great products. And we do that through our workflow as well, which you can just check out on our website at grandengine.com. So joining me today, Dr. Dan Burnett and Dr. Lisa Voronkova. Really excited to have you both. Dan, would you start us off with just a quick background intro of you?
Sure, great. Yeah, so I'm a biomedical engineer by training. I worked about a year at the FDA, and then I went on to medical and business schools. I did my internship at the Mayo Clinic and matched for a residency at Stanford, but never went. I ended up starting my first company, and I joined the venture firm that funded that company. I was there for a couple of years before I realized I really liked building companies more than investing in them. And then I started Theranova, and that was 20 years ago. And we've had about one spin out a year from Theranova since then. We've had, I think, 20 or so. And I've recently also signed a partnership with UCSF where we take in external projects.
Impressive. Yeah. So we're having a mini reformed venture capitalist meeting. That
Yeah.
well, that's
Yeah.
saying, yeah, it's like venture's a weird gig where it's the only job I've had where you become the CEO of a company and some people perceive it as a demotion, but
Yeah. Yeah.
happiness reigns. Yeah.
And this is, I'll tell you, between VC and grant funding, it's night and day, of course, right? So
Yeah.
that's why it's been great working with you. I think I read somebody sent me a link to the most prolific SBIR companies in San Francisco, and we are number one for a for-profit company. And part of that's because of Grant Engine.
Wow. Well, that's, I mean, I think Theranova, we did this count maybe a few months ago, but I think total grant submissions was, I think, clocked in at 144,
Yeah.
which is like, and you, yeah, just you've been an amazing partner and inspiration for our team. And I think we're trying to figure out how to make the volume and quality go together, right? So
Yep.
yeah, it's been a great relationship. So really respect you what you're doing, and you've got our best energy and focus. So yeah,
Thanks.
great. Yeah, Lisa, you just wrote a book. Tell you background and
So I got my PhD in math. I'm not a biomedical engineer, but for the last 10 years, I'm working in this space. So I run R&D shop for complex medical devices. Our R&D shop is located in Ukraine. I moved to New York recently for the last 3 years, but the team is still located in Ukraine. And we have a team of 60 engineers, either with master's degree or PhD in engineering, working with complex medical devices as orthopedic devices, everything from implants to bone drilling devices and at-home rehabilitation, any sort of wearable devices and equipment that goes inside of the operation room, like medical ventilators or robotic surgeons and so on. And I wrote the book. It's actually a fun story because I wrote it after working as a mentor at Vanderbilt University. So I thought, okay, students are asking me the same questions over and over again. So I should put all the answers in one book and just send them to read the book instead of repeating myself. But out of sudden, the book became fairly popular, and I'm really proud to see that it's like number 16 biomedical engineering in Amazon now. So it's exciting. I was trying to explain in a really simple words what to expect from building a medical device from idea to market for the first time,
yeah,
like all the steps.
Amazing. What's the title of the book?
We call it Hardware Bible.
Hardware Bible.
So build a medical device from scratch. So I wrote it for myself, but 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So second name is like the book I wish I had before building my first medical device.
Love it.
I
Love
like
it.
that.
We'll put the link in the um, comments section or in the for the YouTube post. But yeah, that's great. So what is there one or two, this is really for Dan, but also you, Lisa, like, are there one or two secrets that would unlock like dramatic progress for an early founder or physician that has an idea that if you did these one or two things, you'd make a you de-risk or make a big step forward in your process as you let's say you've got a good idea, there's clearly a problem that needs to be solved, you've got a good maybe a reliable there's you can engineer a solution, but we don't yet have a prototype, that maybe at that stage, what are one or two things you'd say that would like the big or whatever you answer it, but are there one or two big unlocks that dramatically can reduce risk and speed things up?
Yeah, so for me, I know we'll have both of that for different answers, but for me, the biggest one, biggest two, I would say, is in what we do, there are two things that are really sort of an art, and that's the regulatory and the reimbursement. I feel like people have focused historically on regulatory and said, once we get the 510(k) clearance, then we'll raise our next round. And they've largely neglected what is now considered to be the biggest risk, payment. So I think put early energy into payment, and to make sure that that makes sense. Because if that doesn't make sense, you're going to be you're pushing a sand dune. And then, so and regulatory still is really important, but I'd say payment is the biggest burden for a lot of these companies that is not given appropriate attention early on.
Nice.
I can't but agree more with that because we often see founders who see just the value for patients, but not the strategic value for a hospital or operational value for a hospital, economical value of what they're building. And I think it's very important to figure it out earlier before you even start investing your time and money into hardware development, because then after all it's all about identifying the value and how big is the problem, and also how much this innovation would affect care pathway in general, because sometimes we've seen innovations which are like brilliant, extremely complex, but the cost of implementation would make it irrelevant for the hospital, like to implement this innovation. So these are business answers, and I believe there are more boring answers that have to be answered before moving forward with the startup.
Right on. Is that getting down to the level of detail? Maybe obviously it is, but is it getting down to the level of detail around how money flows and at for that use case, like whether it's the hospital can charge by the procedure or if it's the surgeon charges, for their time, time in a different setting, maybe in a clinic that's concierge. Um, do you have to get down to that level of detail? And then like, is it a HCPCS code versus private pay? Maybe unpack to what level of detail you really have to interrogate payment and reimbursement.
Yeah, yeah. From my perspective, it is that level of detail, and beyond. Not just that, it's also looking at whose bottom line are you going to impact. So I have a story I like to tell of a company that I invested in when I was at the venture firm. This was a great company. It had a auto transfusion. They were the first to come up with auto transfusion. So you're going in for an elective procedure, you give your own blood, and if you need blood, you get your own blood. If you don't need it, it goes to whoever needs it after that. And so it was brilliant. It was obvious. It was a head slapper. We funded them. They were off to the races. They were raising a lot of money because it's a win-win for everybody. You're not exposing the patient to other people's blood. They did not include the Red Cross in their survey of potential stakeholders. And the Red Cross went on a PR campaign, called them for-profit vampires, and offered the same service at a lower cost. So it's beyond just payment. It's also seeing who else's payments you'll be impacting, whose bottom line will you be affecting. That was a tricky one because not a lot of people would have thought you need to kiss the ring of the Red Cross on this one, right? But but in terms of understanding the payment process, it's super crucial. I had another company who's that I almost invested in because I also invest a little bit, where they said they have breakthrough designation, which means CMS will cover their payments for a certain period of time. And all you have to do is meet the cost criteria. But then I dug into it more. The cost criteria is that it has to cost literally two-thirds of the entire DRG now. So it needs to cost this huge amount. It's not that it has to meet a cost criteria that is low enough, it's that it has to be high enough, and the hospital has to bear a fraction of that burden. I think it's 20%. So even 20% of 60% of the entire DRG is unpalatable to the hospital. So digging into that level to understand whether something like this even applies to you is crucial because somebody will dig in eventually, and eventually you're going to have to start submitting for payments, and you're going to have massive resistance at the hospital level.
Yeah. Just DRG?
Oh, sorry. Diagnosis related grouping. A lot of hospital-based conditions are now paid based on a diagnosis related grouping, and it's a single amount for that condition.
Yeah.
If you go in with an uncomplicated heart attack, you will be paid this amount, and anything they use to treat that heart attack comes out of their bottom line.
Yeah. Right on. Right on. Amazing. That's great. I want to ask how you go figure those things out. But at least before I jump to that question, anything else that you would say about to what level of detail is needed on the reimbursement
Yeah.
and payment?
I mean, it's really hard to predict everything, but you might want to predict as much as you can because according to statistics on FDA website, it would take 7 years on average to bring medical device to market. And so you have only one life, so you don't want to risk it building something that's going to fail. So instead of doing something that people tend to like to do, which is talking to patients or designing a device itself, I think this prep work have to be done upfront, even though it's really hard to predict everything from the very beginning. For example, in Dan's example, I'm sure that founder could never imagine that would happen with the Red Cross. It's like you have to build already something similar in the space to be aware of the entire process and all the potential risks. And two things we are trying to advise our founders, and sometimes we're doing it ourselves. First one is go to hospital and just observe all the processes, because even if you're doing in-depth interviews with doctors or with nurses, sometimes they're not even mentioning some processes which are just, so usual to them. And unless you see the process with your own eyes, you would understand that they're doing something. So you would consider it into your business strategy. And second part is to find someone who is trying to build similar device or similar startup in your space and failed, and ask them to be your mentor or interview you, or at least something really close to what you're trying to build, because they, I think, would be fairly open to share about their mistakes.
Yeah, it's like you learn way more from your failures, and that would be a opportunity lost if they just that knowledge of what didn't work is just lost to time versus reintegrating it so that others don't have the same footfalls. Yeah. Good. Those are great. So how do you mentioned this a little bit, Lisa, of how you get to those answers, maybe embedding in a hospital or interviewing folks. But for both of you, how do you do that landscape view of who's going to pay for it, who's going to win, who's going to lose? How do you go through? How do you go through? Who do you talk to? How do you talk to people? Where would you go? How do you figure that out?
I can give example of one of the recent projects first. So we have our own tool, which is called like value matrix. We created it a couple of years ago, and now we just follow this instrument, but it's super simple. The device I want to talk about was a fall prevention device in a hospital. And so, well, this had like different types of value. So hospital have to purchase this device, then nurse in the hospital have to use this device. Patients should benefit from the device. Then insurance should save money, and also like you have to receive reimbursement from Medicare, and also you have to consider workflow changes in a hospital, not only affected by this immediate moment when your device is being used, but also all the follow-up steps that will be affected. And so we just give this matrix to founders, and I also put it in the book just to know what you don't know about the process, like what you haven't considered.
Yeah, nice. Sorry, Dan, you're on mute.
And I would say something similar. It's important to do a pretty comprehensive stakeholder analysis. And when it comes to stakeholders, you can look at it three different ways. There's the cycle of care, meaning the people that care for the patients. And that in this case, one of the tangential ones, the one that I mentioned, would have been the Red Cross. They're the ones that are part of the cycle of care because they're donating the blood that the patients need. There's the flow of money, and for the flow of money, again, it's the Red Cross because they are paid for their blood so they can support their mission. And then the last one is the journey of the product. Is there some point of the product getting into that cycle of care that could be a resistance to your product getting into the market? So if you look at it from those three perspectives, I think you can usually identify all the stakeholders that are involved and then figure out your impact on those stakeholders and whether they have power in the situation and are a decision maker, in which case the important stakeholders that have high power in the decision-making process, those are going to be your biggest risks by far.
Yeah, incredible. So the cycle of care, which is how the patient probably, whatever, all the places they would be touched in the ecosystem of their
Mhm.
journey of the product in its path to be proven and introduced. What was the third one?
Flow of money.
Oh, of money.
So, so using I had a urine output monitoring device. So using that as an example, the cycle of care is the nurse will be a big part of that. If the nurse doesn't like the device, we're not going to get adopted. If they really hate it, unless you can show some massive clinical benefit or cost savings benefit where it becomes an order from down high on high that they have to adopt it. But they're a pretty powerful stakeholder there, the nurse, so you have to satisfy them. For the flow of money, you have to show the hospital it's not going to cost money, especially under the constrained DRG, these diagnosis related groupings.
Yeah.
And for the journey of product, you have to make sure that whoever is doing purchasing is also not, doesn't have conflict of interest. This used to be a bigger thing when the salespeople would come in and take them out on trips, and it really the Medtronic and the Bard and the Baxter guys were and gals were amazing at schmoozing them. So in order to get your product in there, even if you satisfy the cycle of care and the flow of money, that's a point of resistance.
Yeah. That's an unlock. That's a big insight. Amazing. Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Thank you. So I want to ask how Theranova and Ova Solutions, which is Lisa's organization, for Theranova, how do you work? Do you take, you said you mentioned you're taking outside tech from UCSF. How does Theranova, what's the business model, and are you only working on companies that you identify yourself, or is it with outside founders or collaborators?
Yeah, thanks. Good question, because it's actively morphing. So we called ourselves an incubator, and that term morphed underneath us. Now there's accelerators, incubators, venture studios, where a venture studio makes their own ventures and tries to fund them. Incubators can bring in or take their own ventures, but they keep them for a long time until they're a success. And accelerators are you go in for 6 months and then you're spit out. It's tough love, right? But they go through very high volumes of companies. We're now somewhere in the middle of all three of those in different situations. So most of the technologies of the 20 that I call spun out, those were hatched internally. Two of those, two of those 20 were brought in from UCSF. But increasingly, a business that we're building now is our CDMO, where we are bringing in external technologies. We're looking at them, and one of the key criteria we look at is this fundable? And one of the key criteria for fundable is it potentially grantable?
Hmm.
So, but we are building that business now more robustly because only have a limited number of ideas, and we see some great ideas out there that we'd like to be involved with, particularly coming from other parts of the world. So Europe, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, they are all very interested in entering the US market. It's the biggest medical device market in the world. And so we are working with a lot of the groups there now to help them do this stakeholder analysis, help them reach out to the FDA, help them figure out the payment process.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, really attractive. Yeah, we've seen other countries like Saudi Arabia has like stood up like an NIH themselves. They've had programs, and I'm not deep with Singapore and other areas in Asia what programs they have, but I think the what the NIH does, NSF, ARPA-H does in the States, I think those global funding sources could be there for them, or cross border, immigrating those tech and team into the States. So
Yep.
that's really attractive. So what, that's impressive, internal homegrown for 20 companies. That's amazing.
Thanks.
Ideation and track record. For what stage, what does a company want to look like, or a client on the CDMO side, or any others that are at UCSF that are kind of percolating? What are the input requirements for you to start your work?
Yeah, so we we look for things where we can add value right away. So if it's something that has similar functionality to one of our other devices, for example, we then that's very attractive to us because we can leverage a lot of what we've done already. We also we if it's to the point where it requires it's everything's fixed and it's marketing, that's not really our area of expertise. We like the problem solving in the earlier stages, and we it could be something that's a prototype that has problems that we can help fix. That's another area of a sweet spot for us. But the one that we would like to point out is Dr. Mitchell Berger, the head of neurosurgery at UCSF. He came to us with an idea. I was a judge on the Shark Tank at UCSF. I'm on faculty in the bioengineering department there. And he came with this idea of this brain mapping technology that stimulates the brain so you can figure out which areas can be resected. It's called functional mapping.
Yeah.
And he brought that as a napkin sketch, and we're going to be submitting a 510(k) in a couple months on that product, and he's going to have our first in man will also be in a couple months. So, and for that technology, we had already had two neuromodulation devices here. So the board and the firmware and a lot of the software to deliver an electrical signal was already done here. That's why we're able to do it so fast and so cheap.
Yeah.
So things like that that have a natural synergy with what things we've already done. And the team here is comfortable with. Those are the things that are the most attractive to us.
Got it. Very nice. And those existing products to see if they line up, are those linked on your website, or how would people know what if it's like a synergy with what you built historically, where would they find that?
Yeah, that's so. Like I said, we're not good at marketing.
You don't need to. You're I
Yeah,
think you are good at marketing, but maybe not a
yeah,
fancy website.
yeah. I think that is something we will do. At least put the list of all the things we've done, because we've done catheters, we've done neuro stimulators, we've even done implants on occasion,
Yeah,
and things we don't do. Like I don't think we'd be interested in orthopedics. Because other than a device that we've made that vibrates to improve bone density, if you wear it, it simulates weight-bearing exercise. Other than that, we've done nothing in ortho. So that would be we'd be learning along with the client on that one. So
right
we're
on.
not as interested in that, but that's a great idea. That'll be a follow-up from this meeting is to put it on a website. So it's at
Well,
least
we need a little
searchable.
help. We've got some marketing. Our Dan Garcia, our marketing lead, will throw me a crumped up piece of paper when I say this, but if you want an assist, we're happy to help out. He's very nimble, and our whole team is very nimble in website design. So we could, I think,
Awesome.
in a couple hours, we could help you do that if you want. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
just
thanks so much.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And if not, we've got other depth of the team. So yeah, amazing trajectory that you and Theranova are on. There's so many other places I want to go. So I'll send you a message after this. We can pick it.
Great.
But so Lisa, building a product is hard and building a company is difficult. Doing it in a war zone seems impossible to me as I say that out loud. How are you doing? How is the team doing? Are they in, is it, are they in, they're not in Kyiv, or are they? Where is the team?
No, it's in Dnipro.
Okay.
So
Even tougher.
it is, but I can proudly say that we never stopped working even for a day since war started. And actually, that's something that made us focus more on MedTech
Yeah.
space because we started as a more industry agnostic R&D shop. So we were working with a variety of the devices, and then after war started, we realized that we didn't want to live in vain. So we started to think about different areas where we have the most of expertise, and we built one, I think, incredible product. I unfortunately still cannot disclose it like on a website because like I always want to talk about it so much, but I can't. But to explain to you, I spent 20,000 hours on this project, which is a lot because on average we're spending 5 to 6,000 only to bring something from idea to market. And this was a device that would go into operation room, but also can be used in a field, so like in a military space and so on. And when the client came to us with his vision, he said, well, other R&D shop decided not to proceed with this project because they said it's physically impossible to build something like that.
Nice.
Well, should I say that we passed animal trials already and stepping into human trials, so physically possible to build it. It's a medical ventilator, which is the size of a laptop, but like unfortunately, I cannot tell more about it. It's just it's was like such a complex and incredible engineering task. And the same way as Dan is trying to address it, we are trying to do it the same way, like trying to find people in the team who had similar experience. Well, we delivered over 200 different projects by now. So very likely we have expertise similar to the device that like is coming to us with the request. And we realized that again, because of the war, made us rethink about our approach to business. And we realized that maybe the biggest value we can deliver is to save time for a client. So we can, very often, we can guarantee the delivery and we can also accelerate the time to market. So for example, if the client comes to us and they have just a prototype, and then they say like, okay, with this prototype, we will collect the data, build an algorithm, and then start working on design for manufacturing. If hardware component is clear to us, we can start design for manufacturing right away, and then just sell the device to the client. That makes sense. So it's like not a very typical model of cooperation, but we started doing it recently, and we already have a couple of clients like that. I hope that answered the question about the war. Of course, we were affected, but mostly mentally, and I think we started to value life more. And I have a lot of colleagues in Israel, and I feel similar vibe from that country as well. So I think it has something to do about living in these dangerous areas.
Yeah. Well, I think it really speaks to the character and constitution of you and your team, where you are faced with that adversity and that reality, that harsh reality of the implications of being in a war zone, and you meet that with a rise to that challenge, and that clarity of focus and the necessity of success is forged in that crucible of difficulty. That's my sense, and I think that the response of that is a very special thing.
I should say it's also hard to move a hardware lab. So if we were a software development company, probably like we could move elsewhere pretty fast. But we have our own mechanical lab, electrical lab. We own the building. We have clean room. We now in the process of renovation, but hopefully in a couple of months we're gonna launch a testing room with a robotic arm for some of our projects. So it's just hard to make a relocation, and we decided that we're gonna stay and work from this environment.
Yeah, necessity is that mother of invention. You gotta be successful, so you are. Yeah. Yeah, I really can't imagine how difficult that probably has been and is. But
Thank you.
it's a testament to the team doing it, and to your leadership. So yeah. So tell us a little bit about OVA and what you do for your partners, and like specifically, and then where at what stage of a company or a team would you want to see them to add your value?
I should say we have two different types of clients. So first one is a startup or doctor who have an idea for medical device, and then they either have a prototype or just a vision. So they come to us and we handle everything related to hardware from idea to production line. So for example, we're working on one project now, which is a tube that has to separate blood and air. And it was just an idea from a founder, just a vision, how he wants it to be done. We created 10 different prototypes, digital prototypes. We made simulation. We selected top 3. Then we created them like as a physical prototypes, and now doing tests with the pig's blood in our facility. So to select the best one, and then we'll proceed to the next step. So this is one type of client where we handle everything from very zero to setting up the production. We don't do manufacturing. We can produce 100 devices for clinical trials. We can do animal testing with our partners in some cases, but we don't do manufacturing. So we typically handle everything to the client. And also trying to make sure that this device would see the market. And this is something that we are doing recently. So I'm asking questions like, okay, do you have connections to FDA experts or to IP experts, or do you understand your reimbursement pathway? And if not, well, I can recommend these people, or you can find someone from your side, and so on. Second type of clients is someone who's already on the market and they need some optimization of their production line. For example, very common case from January this year is a request to relocate production from China to Europe or from China to United States. And why is it even a challenge? Because, very often we are forced to make reverse engineering of their own devices because we see a huge mismatch in communication, communication documentation from the factory. Some parts are missing. We have to find some other production line. We have to figure out where would be the best price and so on. So that is something that we can do. And also be sure that our client would own the IP during the process, because it's also like another questionable part. Or something that we're doing for middle-sized companies is to organize their bill of material, maybe optimize it a little bit, maybe create a second version of the device and so on. So when you don't have to hire the full-time engineers, you can just give us a task and we can use our team to make it faster and more efficiently, because very likely we had experience already in the field. As I mentioned, like we delivered 200 different devices. So
amazing. So that's quite impressive, and be able to play in both of those areas, right? R&D is hard, but manufacturing is hard on that transfer. But to be able to do both is pretty, speaks to the range and capability.
to be very honest, we're trying to keep our focus on engineering only. So about the manufacturing, we just talk to partners and trying to understand what would be the most efficient way to set up the manufacturing there. But we're not experts in manufacturing. Just wanted to clarify that.
Well, I think if you're designing a product, if you're engineering a product for manufacturing, that's engineering, right? Is that yeah, I mean, I think the best products, the designers are sitting next to the assembly line, right? Or the manufacturing line, right? So you do both concurrently, but if you have to do it post facto, there's still, engineering for manufacturing, it's very difficult to design a product for manufacturing and divorce from having awareness of how that manufacturing happens. That's the whole thing. So you probably know more about manufacturing than you may let on.
That's correct, but I believe that the best approach is to sit not to next to manufacturing, but sit next to a doctor or someone who's going to use this device at first, and then you can just adjust the design for manufacturing to production line.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
I think it is important though to to design with manufacturing in mind. I've had a couple instances where we've had to essentially completely reboot and lost a lot of that work because the design we came up with was not moldable. So we had to do a substantial engineering reboot to make it so it is moldable.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah, I think crucial if you're making anything at scale or anything that's not brain damage to make, and you're totally correct. Obviously, Lisa, the human factors are just the usability of the device in that healthcare professional's hands, whether that's a corpsman, downrange in a medical, in a military theater, or a nurse setting up a catheter. It's got to work for that person. Yeah. So we're almost at time, and I want to ask. I'll ask at the end if either of you want to say or add at the end, but I want to just get the one or two or three pearls of wisdom on the regulatory side as well. We talked about payment and reimbursement as one of the two big things that are gaps to making big progress and fast. In this new world of McCrary running the FDA, and I think at least in the United States, what would you, and just regulatory in general, what would you say are things that you wish you knew, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and what's the regulatory unlock that is able to make big progress quickly?
Well, what I notice is like now innovators face a paradox because they have like faster pathways but higher scrutiny on outcomes. So it's basically a shift from paperwork to real world proof. So companies need to invest early in evidence generation and value delivery. But on another hand, I see a lot of alternative approaches coming recently when you don't even have to make a clinical trial and people are trying to simulate this data sometimes to create more evidence. So I should say that it's obviously important to consider regulatory early on, like early in product development life cycle, but do not focus on that too much. Um, mm, engage early, but with a strategy. So you don't need a full regulatory pathway locked in day one, but you do need alignment on claims, on endpoints, on value proposition, and um, also like same for payers. Like don't assume reimbursement will fix a weak business model. So we help teams map and stage engagement plan so they don't scale on a shaky ground, to say so.
Yeah. So when you say engage early, you're talking about pick up the phone or send an email to the FDA, meet with them,
Yes.
talk to them. Here's what we're going to do. What do you think? Like actually like embed and engage.
Um, yes, and also a lot of FDA experts are offering free 1 hour consultation. So I would encourage to take this at least to understand which class of the device it is, because we've seen examples when the product is about to start in mass production, they realize that they're receiving different classification. They have to change the plastic, but you cannot just change the plastic and pour it in the same mold. So like you have to redesign the mold and then do more redesign. So you spend more time, more money. It's critical for a startup because like every month counts. It's a burn rate. So
Yeah.
Biocompatibility testing, the for a new plastic too. So, and I would say exactly the same thing. Engage early, but engage with a strategy. You absolutely do not want to engage and say, what does the FDA want? Because they'll tell you, we want 1,000 patient study with 10-year follow-up, including mortality data. So you want to engage and ask them specific questions that you think you would like to have answered in a way that doesn't open the door to them designing the study for you. And then, and if there is a guidance, a really strong guidance on it, I actually think there might even be a disadvantage to engage because the guidance, if it's favorable to you, one of my companies, there was a great guidance and we didn't talk to the FDA at all. The first time they heard from us is when we submitted our PMA, and it was approved. So,
Right on.
but it's a if you approach them with a good strategy in mind and don't leave it too open-ended, I think it's a huge benefit at this point. They're very open to discussing through this pre-submission. It's called a Q-sub. They're very open to discussing. I can also tell you with grants, it helps a lot to say that you've met with the FDA.
Yeah. That's street cred. And like, yeah, we like to mention the meeting minute reference number and
Yep.
direct quotes. It's that street cred is gold. And I've seen some later stage commercial readiness pilots where they're like, it looks great. We love it. All you need to do is get an FDA sign off and you're good.
Yep.
And that's like mandatory for, like we saw that at NIM for a neurological fMRI diagnostic. And
Yep.
it was tantamount to getting the grant. So it definitely de-risks things. And sometimes funding agencies need to see it, not unlike an investor, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, anything else that either of you would say or share, or something that you want to be known, that you want Theranova and Ova Solutions to be known for? Yeah, open mic.
Yeah, so at Theranova, I would say what we have to like to be known for is sort of the triple aim of reducing cost, improving outcomes, and expanding access to care. And I think the more you hit on if you hit on two of those, it's great. If you hit on all three, then that's a slam dunk unless your stakeholder analysis reveals that there's a red cross in the mix. And then if there is, then you approach them early, right? And kiss the ring, do what it takes. I
Yeah.
think that company could have created a company with Red Cross as a shareholder, even if they had approached them in the right way.
Yeah, the wisdom of experience. That's amazing.
Yep.
Thank you, Dan. That's great.
Yep.
We recently became like on a mission to share all our experience openly. So most members of my team are posting on LinkedIn about our case studies openly with all the numbers, all the processes, all the mistakes that we've done, just to help other founders to avoid some mistakes. And I believe that we are the company who can build complex medical devices fast. We are not consultants or advisors, we are engineers who are ready to take full responsibility. We know that if you come to us, your device will work, period. But if you want to build it by your own, the information is very open. So I recently posted an article about how to build robotic surgeon. I believe I laid it step by step because I tried to Google it. I haven't found it. So I thought like, okay, we can write it because we'll build robotic surgeons. And same for other types of products. So we're trying to be really open about the knowledge that we acquired during the last 10 years. And that's also another reason why I wrote this book. It's free in digital version, at least in the United States. So I wrote it in a way that it would be enough just to take a look at the number of chapters and the names of chapters to understand what founder is missing.
Incredible. Very good. So yeah, I studied aerospace engineering, so we've got, and I'm definitely focused on the life sciences. So we got three engineers, and that is one of the greater honors of working on this call with both of you as fellow engineers. I think the engineering capacity is solving those problems in every dimension, not just the technical, but the reimbursement, regulatory, the people equation. So yeah, it's a good found grounding. So I would just last want to, that's really helpful. And thank you so much for joining this video cast. The name Theranova, I'm guessing, tell me if I'm not correct, but therapeutic or impact plus innovation, is that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So how does the OVA Solutions is the website. Theranova is the website. How does OVA Solutions come?
Yeah, there
Okay.
could be some trademark issues here. There's an ova in Theranova.
Ah, yeah, that's right. I started an IP battle.
So this is actually a super fun story. We are not good at marketing either. So most of our clients were coming through word of mouth to us. We hired a new marketing expert a couple of years ago only, and he suggested to bring these new brands because we were called like we had different names in the company before. And we were sitting together, like I have three more co-founders. We were sitting together trying to decide how to name the company again so it would be easier to Google and easier to understand. And we agreed that we're going to name it after three of my kids. So first letter of every of my kids goes to OVA. And then solutions
That's
for
so great. I
solutions.
never would have guessed that. Yeah. Well, yeah. The
That
most
was a mistake because like there are so many female health startups called OVA, but we decided like, okay, who cares? What
Yeah.
is the name of R&D shop? Nobody cares. So
Yeah, that's
let's
great.
call it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a very in-depth discussion about changing our name after Elizabeth Holmes' debacle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Theranos shall
Yep,
forever be tagged with, yeah. Well, you are like
I know.
the
I'm
anti
like, I need,
Theranos.
she's all flash, no substance. We're all substance, no
Right.
flash,
Yeah. Yeah. And,
right?
and who's thriving and who's in jail, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I'd much rather tie my connection to you than than Elizabeth Holmes for sure. So
Yep.
amazing. This has been outstanding. I think sometimes I come away from these discussions smarter, and sometimes I come away from these discussions having learned from geniuses, and that just happened. So thank
Oh,
you both
thanks.
very much. This is incredibly valuable, and we are grateful for your time. And please, for the audience, run, don't walk to Theranova.
Oh,
And
thanks.
if you want something complicated that's impossible to do, or you think it's impossible, call Lisa.
Thank you so
Great.
much for having me.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thanks so much.
Yeah, amazing.